Next up in our other terms, generally useless, as we discuss the term sheet, are redemption rights, which are not nearly as exciting as redeeming a lottery ticket after you win it.
What are redemption rights?
Redemption rights allow an investor at some point in the future to force the redemption of their equity by the company. Most venture capital firms have a limited life. They tend to be 10-year funds with additional extensions of a year or two. So when you think of a venture capital firm, and we'll talk about the fund dynamic later, a venture capital firm has a series of these funds. As venture firms get to the end of the life of their funds, they start to feel some, in some cases, pressure, in other cases, desire to start to liquidate their investments. So if a venture firm invests in your company in year 4 or year 5 of their life, and it takes your company 7 or 8 or 9 years to get to an exit, there's some point along the way where that VC firm might want to try to force an exit, either through a sale of the company, an IPO, or a repurchase of their equity. Now, for all practical purposes, it's very difficult for a venture firm to force that transaction to happen. If the company is being successful, greed kicks in, and most VCs want the company to continue to grow. If the company's struggling and not being successful, it doesn't have any money to buy back the shares, and there's really not anything that can come out of a transaction that's a forced transaction, or not anything significant. However, redemption rights continue to be a vestige of the past. Again, going back 30 years or so, where in term sheets you see this notion where after 5 years or 6 years, the venture firm has a right of redemption. Now, in some later stage investments, these are tricky, where an investor will ask for a redemption right over a period of time. Most of the time, if as an entrepreneur you're approached with an investor who asks for redemption rights in the term sheet, you can generally push back, and it's usually one of those terms that the investor will happily take out. The flip side of it is the actual real cost of that term is not that significant, because again, if you're doing well, they're not going to want to exercise their redemption rights. If you're struggling, there's nothing to pay the redemption rights with. But it is a cause of conflict sometimes in those companies that aren't really working very well.
Have you ever had a circumstance where you've exercised redemption rights?
I can't think of a single time in all the companies I've ever been involved in where I've either exercised our redemption rights or been involved in a situation where another investor has exercised theirs. I have, when I was first starting out in the 1980s, I did hear of a couple of cases occasionally where that would happen. And in almost all of the cases I heard of, the redemption rights were exercised and the company bought the shares back for a de minimis amount, $1 or $10. Which, by the way, if an investor says to you, I invested $5 million in your company and I'd like out, don't be afraid to offer them $1 in exchange for all the shares that they paid $5 million for. You never know.